Hi guys, so in this lesson we're going to briefly look at loss of sovereignty. Sovereignty is the concept that a nation has complete and utter control over its internal affairs. That means nobody else can tell that country what happens within its borders. It sets its own laws. So before we start to think about sovereignty, I'd like us to think about Western Sahara. Western Sahara, by all intents and purposes, could be classified as a nation state, but not a sovereign nation state. I'd like you to click on this link here, which will take you to the Google map. And when you have a look at the Google map, it's that line, it's that dotted line rather than a solid line that you will see between Morocco and Western Sahara. I'd like you to have a think about what that dotted line means. Please pause the video and have a think about what that dotted line means. Hopefully you've paused the video and thought about that dotted line. So there's clearly a difference there. The Western Sahara as a sovereign nation doesn't exist, but as a nation state it does exist. So there's some confusion perhaps in your mind over these terms. Let's have a think about what the difference between a nation state is and a sovereign state. A sovereign state has control over everything, but a nation state is something a little bit more. It is where we have a understanding that there is a something collective, something that joins people together. Could be a similar heritage, could be a language, could be religion. Belgium is a sovereign state, but is it really a nation state? Is there anything that binds together people, politics, religion, or language? Have a watch of this video on Belgium. I'm so sorry if you're from Belgium because it's not exactly complimentary. Put forward arguments for and against Belgium being a nation state or not. Stop, watch the video, stop this video, and then we'll have a think about the European Union. So things become a little bit more complicated when we think about the sovereign state. The UK is a sovereign state, it's also a nation state. Just about managed to hold itself together after the latest referendum. But it's not the highest authority in the land. The European Union can overrule decisions made by the UK government. So ask yourself the question, in the case of the UK, is the UK a true sovereign state when it can be overridden by the European Union? We like to think of nation states as quite a constant thing, something that doesn't change. Actually, nation states are changing all of the time. One of the big changes that we've seen is Yugoslavia. Here you can see on the green map we've got Yugoslavia, and Yugoslavia broke up in the 1990s as a nation state into separate nations. Together we know those as the former Yugoslavian states. So actually the idea of an independent sovereign state has only been around since the 1600s, the Treaty of Westphalia. And that established the concept of a nation state. And what's really interesting in this map is that a lot of nation states we can see here, but England is actually separate from Scotland. Germany, huge number of very small nation states in the 1600s. France, Spain and Portugal, one country. So from that we can see that the concept of what is a nation state has changed considerably. This is very recent. Some states, like for example the nation state of Papua New Guinea, that didn't actually exist before. It didn't exist a few years ago. It used to be part of Indonesia, now it's an independent state. It is really struggling in places. In Papua New Guinea, it's really struggling to maintain itself as a nation state. Not as a sovereign state, that's not so much a problem, but as a nation state there are a number of issues that are developing there. There are about 192 members of the United Nations. These could be considered as sovereign states, not necessarily nation states though. There are nation states that are not on the list. They are not sovereign. They're not sovereign states. A really good example of this, which would be relevant to us, is Taiwan. Taiwan as a nation state does exist by some people's description, As a sovereign state, though, it doesn't exist. It's not recognised by the United Nations and technically does not have autonomy and freedom from mainland China, although I'm sure people in Taiwan would contest that. We go on to the idea of microstates. These are very, very small countries. The smallest one is the Vatican with 826 citizens. These are sovereign states. They do control their own affairs and all of their own affairs. There are some videos for you to watch there on microstates. Building on this idea again of nations that do not exist, there's Somaliland that does not exist but does operate as a functioning state. We're talking about places with a legal system, a taxation system. Even they would claim their own army. Transnistria is another example of this, and really people in Somaliland and Transnistria are very much in a state of transition and flux. So it just goes to show us, even though there are many dubious aspects to a sovereign state and a nation state, if you don't have those things, it really compromises the ability of your people in your country to prosper. Going on from that, something for us to have a think about, is Hong Kong a nation state? It is certainly not a sovereign state because we do not have full control. We control everything but our military. We don't have a military. Hong Kong relies on mainland China for its military activities. But do we exist as a nation state? Some videos for you to watch. You can watch this video here, which is the national anthem. We are bound by a language. There is something specific, a Hong Kong culture. We certainly saw people expressing that Hong Kong culture. No, we are not Chinese, we are Hong Kong. Bound by two languages, which is Cantonese and English. So do we exist as a nation state? Some people say that we do. Do we exist as the sovereign state? No, absolutely not. In legal terms, we do not. Finally, a little video, communist video there for you to watch, like just reinforcing that Hong Kong is an SAR and it is a part of China. So I'd like to go back to the very, very start and say to you that a sovereign state does need to have recognised political boundaries. The map is the state. Now, in the 1800s, Nepal did start to emerge as a nation state, and now it is a nation state because it's established its boundaries. But it very, very much comes back to the idea that the map is the state. There does need to be a clearly defined physical presence with clearly defined borders and boundaries for that country.